This lesson is on how to multiply and divide positive and negative integers. So here are 8 sample problems where I'd like for you to pause the video and try to think about any kind of patterns that you notice. I bet you can come up with the rules yourself and you don't even need this lesson. The first thing that I like to point out on these rules are the last 2. That's right. If you have 2 positive numbers, your answer is going to be positive. Just like you learned in 2nd and 3rd grade when you were first starting the multiplication and division facts. Let's look at what other answers are positive. This one gives you a positive answer, and this one gives you a positive answer. So let's look at the factors. Both the factors are negative, then the answer is positive. That's the truth. The other ones have one negative factor and one positive factor. As you notice with these statements, it doesn't matter if the negative factor is smaller or if the negative factor is bigger, the answer is still the negative 12. The same applies to division. That's what's great about multiplying and dividing, is they both follow the same rules. So let's review. On your notes, draw a line for which problem has a solution. So a positive times a positive number is going to be a positive. A positive times a negative is going to be a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive answer. So now let's try some sample questions. I would encourage you to pause the video, try them yourself first, and then press play. -8 times -4. Well, I know in my rules that they said a negative times a negative is a positive. So it would be positive 32. You just do the multiplication like you normally would. Now, multiplication can also be written with parentheses, just like number 2. That really means -3 times 9. -3 times 9 is a -27. So let's recap here. When you multiply, you can either use an X for multiplication, like here. You can use parentheses, like there. I could have also just used one set of parentheses, like this. That also means multiplication, when a number is right next to a set of parentheses. That also means multiplication. And the last way that we're going to use in 6th grade is a dot. So sometimes you can even use a dot to represent multiplication. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Number 3, that slash means a division. That's the same thing as saying 36 divided by 4 equals -9. Another way that 6th graders write division is by using a fraction bar. So 36 divided by -4. Number 4, there's 3 factors. So I would do 5 times 2, which is a positive 10, because 2 negative is a positive, times a -9. So now I have a positive times a negative, which is going to equal a negative number. So, to recap, on this slide, we talked about the rules of multiplying and dividing. We also went over different ways that multiplication can be represented and different ways that division problems can be given to you. So, what we noticed with number 4 on the last slide is that the number of negative signs is odd, then the answer is going to be negative. So, for example, if I have one negative number, then my answer is going to be a negative number. The same applies to if there are 3 negative numbers. Let's think about that. If I multiply the first 2, a -3 times a -1, I would get a positive answer. A positive answer times a negative answer is then going to give me back a negative answer. If the number of the negative signs is even, the answer is positive. So, A negative 2 times a negative 2 is going to equal a positive 4. But what if I had 4 negative numbers? Sure, you could do all the workout. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. Now a positive 1, I'm going to go ahead and write the rest of my problem here. A positive 1 times a negative 1 is a negative 1. It's like a really long nacho chip. A negative 1 times a negative 1 is a positive 1. It's really easy when you know these shortcut rules because then you can just do your multiplication. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4 negative signs. That means my answer is positive. Okay, let's try some on this next slide. There's my division problem written as a fraction. But there's only one negative sign, so I know my answer is going to be negative. For number 2, I know that there are 2 negative signs, so my answer is going to be a positive number. Now I can go through and do my math. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. There's one negative sign, so my answer is going to be negative. 15 times 1 is negative 15. Oh my. I'm going to do the math first with the numbers. So 2 times 20 is 40, times 2 is 80. 80 times 10, let's write this out. So those 3 numbers were 80. Times 10 is 800. Times 2 is 1600. Now let's figure out if our answer should be positive or negative. We're going to count the signs. 1, 2, 3. If there's an odd number of negative signs, the answer is going to be negative.